Good afternoon. Happy Earth Day, everyone. My name is Laura Breedlove McDaniel. I'm the Senior Alumni Relations Officer of your Sacramento State Alumni Association. I will be acting as your moderator today. Thank you for joining us for our Career Buzz speaker event. Today we're focusing on careers in the environmental field because it is Earth Day, right? So I'm honored to be here with a wonderful panel of Sacramento State alumni and thrilled for you all to hear the diverse experiences and success stories in the room. Career Buzz really connects students and recent graduates with our diverse alumni network through Q&A discussions and networking. So that's what we're going to see today. Today's event takes advantage of our strong Sacramento State alumni network. We're going to hear from two successful alumni who've made a significant impact within our community and are volunteering today as part of a larger university goal to keep alumni engaged with each other and with students. So we're excited to showcase these successful alumni and hear directly from them about their experiences, and more importantly, for them to share some advice. So I'd like to welcome our panelists and invite them to introduce themselves. If you could share your name, pronouns, major, degree field, class year, and then what position you have now, employer, who you're working with, and maybe a fun fact too. Amanda, can you start us off?
Yes, hello, my name is Amanda Croteau. I'm a dual graduate of Sac State, so I got my bachelor's in earth science with a minor in biology in 2022, and then I went immediately into my master's and got my master's in biological sciences in 2025. I'm an ocean scientist, as well as I am now working for the state as a wildlife biologist. So my experience is mainly with the federal government, now with the state, and I've also been in academia as well to a strategic Sac State. And my fun fact is I'm a kidney donor. So right before I graduated with my bachelor's degree, going into my master's, I donated my kidney, which was very interesting filling out my master's application from the hospital bed. That's my fun fact.
Wow, very fun and noble, honorable. Yeah, all of that. Thank you so much. Ryan, welcome.
Hello. I had to remember what year I graduated. It's been a little bit. I think I graduated a little bit before Amanda. I graduated in 2009 from Sac State. I came through the environmental studies program for the campus. And then I went back a few years after that and got a master's in business administration. Yeah, so that's my education. I'm the director of energy and sustainability at Sac State for the Office of Sustainability. So we have a team of about six full-time employees and a number of student assistants. I really enjoy the work that we do. It's super fun. Fun fact, I am the first person in my family to go to college, and I'm a Scottish immigrant. I don't know if it's fun, but it's kind of interesting. So.
It's a fun fact and not uncommon at Sac State to have kind of first generation students. So definitely representing a large swath of our alumni for in that regard. Thank you again to both of you for joining us today and sharing your experiences. We're going to spend like the next 30 to 40 minutes hearing kind of firsthand from Amanda and Ryan about their career journey, successes, innovation, as well as some advice, hopefully, on making the most of your experiences. So while you're in college and then kind of beyond. That's our goal today. While we're kind of doing the panel, we're not going to take questions directly, but we do encourage our guests, our other people here in our webinar to use the Q&A feature. Please post your questions, and then we'll use the last 10 minutes or so to cover as many questions as possible. So if you are joining us today and have a question, please find the Q&A function down at the bottom of your panel and pop that question in there, and we'll get to those at the end. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. We're going to start with a fun icebreaker. I don't, whatever your thoughts are on icebreakers. Um, but this is career related. So we thought we'd start with what was your first job, and maybe what are some of those life lessons you learned from that job, even if it was quite a while ago. Ryan, can you maybe start us there?
So yeah, my first job was in high school actually, so a bit before college. I worked at a feed store, like a pet store. They didn't sell animals, just food. Called Anjan's. It's down in the Bay Area. It's a big chain. And so I don't recall how I started where I think I was like, I really like animals, so I'm gonna go work at a feed store, not realizing that there's not any animals there. But so as far as what I learned from that, I mean, I think it really gave me some experience early on how to interact in a professional manner with customers. And so that's something that kind of carried over. And because you're not, prior to that, you aren't really having to do that in any capacity. And so, being at the register and being kind of the face of the business, it really teaches you just how to interact in a professional environment like that. The other thing that it taught me is I don't like taxes. I remember getting my first paycheck and being like, I thought I made more money than that. So, yeah, those would probably be the two big takeaways from that.
Yes, always a kind of harsh reality when you get that first paycheck for sure. But great, yeah, great connection with what it's still teaching you to this day. Amanda, how about you?
I was 16 and I got a job as a bagger at Rayleigh's. I'm sure we all know Rayleigh's. It's around campus. Because I'm from Elk Grove, so I'm local. And I think the thing that taught me that relates to my job now was working shifts that maybe I didn't really want to work. I was in high school, so I would start at 4 a.m., like open at the store, and no one wants to do that. I'm not a morning person, but I did it because it was my job. And that kind of plays into my job now. There's sometimes, I have to go away sometimes or go in really early or stay late for surveys. And so that kind of played into that. But I think more importantly than my first job was my second job. I worked at Sac State in student affairs in the EOP office for like three or 4 years. And that taught me how to network. And I think that was a huge factor into my success going into grad school. My career was how to network.
That's awesome. Yeah. I think that leads us kind of to our next question pretty nicely, Amanda. So, we're kind of here today, hopefully give some insight to students and recent grads. Um, so what has helped you along the way? Is there advice anyone has given you, or just knowing that like networking is important, something along those lines of what has been the arc of getting to, a stable and hopefully pretty successful place in your career?
Many people actually told me that the worst thing to say is no. And I've kind of just taken that with me throughout my entire undergrad, grad school. I applied, my first internship was with NASA. And obviously, when I applied to that, I was like, I'm not going to get this. But I was like, you know what? The worst I could say is no. I applied anyways, and I got it. And that kind of set off, the chain of my career. Same thing with grad school. I applied to this very prestigious national scholarship through NOAA, which is like the ocean version of NASA. And I was like, I'm not going to get it. They never give it to master students. It's usually to PhD students. And it was $90,000. And I was like, I'm not going to get this. But the worst I could say is no, right? And I applied and I got it. So even though I've applied to like hundreds of scholarships and I've only gotten maybe, 10, but I still got those 10 because the worst they could say is no. So might as well apply.
I love it that like kind of facing that fear, it's not as big as it might seem. But yeah, I love it. Thank you. How about you, Ryan? What's the best advice? Or
I
yeah,
I mean mine's kind of similar to be honest. Don't just wait around. I think a lot of times people are like, okay, I got the degree, now the job should just like fall in my lap, and that's not the reality, right? Like I always tell people like when students talk to me, I'm like, the degree gets you the interview, but your work experience, your internships, stuff like that, that's what gets you the job. And so like don't be afraid to kind of reach out to people like Amanda mentioned, like internships were the most helpful thing that I did as part of my career path through school. I mean, I did two internships when I was a student at Sac State, one at the U.S. Geological Survey and one at Kaiser, and both of them turned into jobs. But neither one of those organizations reached out to me and said, "Hey, we want you to come intern." Like my Kaiser one. Really, what that was is I did a thesis project in the environmental studies program at Sac State. It's required as part of the program. And so, with that thesis, you're required to kind of come up with a project. And so, what I decided is I'm more of a hands-on person. I wanted to do like actually a project instead of a paper. So I reached out to Kaiser. The project I was going to do was how to reduce hospital waste, and I'm like, well, let's try and reach out to Kaiser and see if they want to work with me on this. And they said yes. And so like it made my thesis project, I think, more valuable as an example because it was kind of a real world application at a real hospital. And it made it more interesting to me because that's how I learn. But at the same time, Kaiser was like, hey, yeah, worst case scenario, we were in the same position as we were before you worked with us. And then fast forward a year later, then they reached out to me and said, hey, we have a position if you're interested in coming to work with us and kind of building on that project. But, and then same with the USGS, like none of those organizations are going to find you. You have to go out and find them and make those connections. So,
Definitely. And it's, tricky out there these days, but taking that initiative, definitely important. Um, and then, excuse me, I want to kind of stay in that internship or that real world experience realm. Um, excuse me, I'm sorry. Ryan, I know you said you lead a team here at Sac State in the Office of Sustainability. When you're adding to that team or hiring, replacing somebody, when you're looking to bring somebody on board, what are those qualities of an employee, of a worker, and maybe not skills necessarily, that you're looking for in either that resume or when you're sitting down and interviewing somebody?
I don't know that mine are pretty typical. I usually try to choose the rebellious people. But that's mostly because our entire job revolves around getting people to do things differently than the way they are. And so I usually look for the people who are not just kind of go with the status quo, have a rebellious streak, are kind of like a self-start, like a goat. Like I don't want somebody who I need to just be like, I need you to do this. And then every day you come in, I need you to do this. I want somebody to be like, hey, I have this cool idea. It might not work, but if it does, it could be great. And have the motivation to just run with it because that's how my team is. We're over energy, water waste, greenhouse gas emissions, the utilities for the campus. So we have a broad scope. And so, finding people like in the energy space who are like, hey, I read about this cool energy project, can I try and run with it? And yeah, that's great. Those are the types of like personalities that I tend to hire because it aligns really well with our industry in general. So.
Great, yeah. I heard like, initiative and thinking outside the box stuff. Hopefully, our students are learning across the board in their degree fields, but um, I like the rebellion piece too. Amanda, anything to add to that? What are you seeing? What are you looking for when you're building a team or working with people?
I'm looking for confidence in a way that, like, even when I apply for jobs, I know I'm not going to have 100% of the skills. But I try to come across as, hey, I don't have this particular skill you're looking for, but I have something similar, and I'm a fast learner, and here's how I could transfer my skills. So I'm looking for confidence that you can, even if you don't have the skill, you have the ability and confidence to learn it kind of in a fast pace, or at least come across that way because I've been in interviews and I was totally faking the confidence, but I gotta fake it till you make it sometimes and end up working out. So I'm looking just for confidence that, hey, I don't have the skill that you're looking for, but I can learn it and I will learn it. And here's something similar I've done that's transferable. So I think just having some confidence in yourself really draws employers in, especially if you're lacking skills in some way.
I think too, you're speaking to the ability to like explain clearly what you've done and what your experience is and what you're capable of, even if it's not that really specific skill. Here's what I did do that is similar and I can adapt and adjust. So I see that for sure. Um, as we get into the workplace, let's talk a little bit about successful work styles. So I want to know, how do you set goals for yourself, maybe day to day, and then like long term? What does that look like? And who wants to go first with that one?
Either. I'll go. That's fine.
Go ahead, Ryan. Yeah.
So I'm a pretty unorganized person, to be honest. So this is something that I actually struggle with personally, as far as the mechanisms. Because the other thing is, like I oversee my staff as well, so I'm constantly trying to keep track of my projects and my progress and their projects and all of that. And I will tell you, I have employees that work for me that are significantly more organized than I am. However, one of the big things we do that I really like, and this is like going from macro to more micro perspective, but I love, like, one of my favorite things to do every year is when we come back after the holidays, January 1st, we sit down, my whole team, and we just spitball projects, right? Some of them are carryover from the year prior. Some of them might not work. Some of them definitely work, but we just have a couple hours where we sit down and we just go, what are the stuff that we would want to do this year? And then we make a list, and then I put that up on the whiteboards in our office. I have a giant one in my office. We have one in our conference room, and so we just list off all the projects, and then we assign names to each of them, right? Like who's going to be working on this project. And then that's there every time we meet, right? Looking at us. And so it's this constant reminder. And then it's also super satisfying because, when we have a team meeting, if we've done something recently, I can be like, here's a pen, go check off one of the boxes. And it's cool to see throughout the entire year all of the projects that we actually get knocked out. It's kind of rewarding. And so, kind of at a macro level for that, my biggest tool, though, is my calendar. If it's not on my calendar, it doesn't get done. So, what I typically do is if I have a big project, I'll set, on my calendar, like it needs to be done by this date. And then I will have short-term goals, like I need to have this done by this date. And then I'll drop those on my calendar as well. And then, we have check-ins, like regular project check-ins with my team. Like when I am part of a broader team working on a project, I tend those check-in meetings tend to help me because it's like an accountability meeting. Like, maybe it's been sitting for a couple weeks and I know I have that meeting coming up, so it kind of forces me because I don't want to sit in the meeting and be like, I didn't do anything, right? So it's that, artificial thing that I put on my calendar that reminds me like, okay, here are the things I need to work on. But definitely establishing short-term goals, and not just having your main goal and then hoping that you do all the things you're supposed to do along the way. And then I really like sticky notes. So I always have sticky notes all over my monitors for the things that need to happen right now. Um,
I love it. I'm absolutely a calendar advocate. I've always preached about the calendar, and it organizes my brain so that I can be a little more successful for sure. Amanda, work styles. I heard a lot about the team too from Ryan. Is there your work style versus somebody else's and, kind of meshing those? But how are you setting goals for yourself?
I'm a pretty organized person, almost to a fault. I would say it's borderline annoying, probably to people in my life. I think for me personally, I do try to set goals for myself at the beginning of the year, and then I set mini goals, like how could I get to this big goal, right? Because it's really daunting to be like, I want to start this new job or I want to do this. Okay, what are some mini goals to kind of get there? So then I'll check in with myself every couple months. Okay, have I met any of those mini goals to get to my larger goal? And if not, then I kind of reassess where I need to be. So in terms of personally, I try to once a year set some big goals and then some smaller goals along the way, and then do check-ins throughout the year. For work, kind of like Ryan said, you have meetings with your team and we'll write down ideas. And also just do check-ins, like we do quarterly check-ins, so it's not as often. But for me personally, like if I need to get something done for work, it's going on my calendar. If I need to review a document by tomorrow, it's on my calendar. Due date tomorrow, I need to review this, or else I'm going to forget because I have a million things going on in my brain. I'm a shared calendar person in my personal life and my work life. So everyone's on the same page with everyone about what's going on. So I think just putting stuff in my calendar, which I remember being in college and I was like, ew, I'm not gonna use Outlook calendar, even though we have it for free. We Sac State. I was like, that's lame. Only old people use their calendar. And then I used it and I was like, ugh, I'm a changed woman. So I highly recommend, even as a student, to start learning how to use a calendar effectively, even for small things like, oh, I got to pay my car registration this week, put it on the calendar. I have a doctor's appointment this week, put it on the calendar. Because those skills really transfer into a career and it makes you a better employee and a better scientist.
Great. Yeah. Perfect. I also heard a lot, like setting aside that time. So whether literally in a calendar, but both of you kind of spoke to that, like each year reflecting as a team or individually, what are the goals you have or your team has? So it seems to be a pretty integral part of working successfully. So I wanted to highlight that and make sure everybody heard, do a little emphasis there. Um, my next question's pretty, we have kind of the same questions as we go through Career Buzz, but this one I think really works for this topic in particular. And both of you have already kind of spoken to it a little bit, but it's about innovation. When we think about progress in our field or in our careers, progress definitely relies on innovation. Um, so what is that value there? Innovative ideas, innovative business practices, innovative processes. Um, in your work, how do those really play a key role? Amanda, you want to get us started with that?
Yeah, I think it's gonna be fun because I think I'm gonna have different answer than Ryan. So I think it really depends on which career I was doing at the time. When I was at NASA, I was a research scientist. So that's entirely innovation. What are the problems in my area? How are we gonna tackle them? How are we gonna survey them? What is our experiment? Okay, that didn't work. Go back, figure it out again. Then you write a research paper. That is 100% innovation. Same thing for my master's degree when I was studying corals. I was studying corals out in Texas, even though I was living in Sacramento. And you have to come up with your research question, your experiment, and it almost never works. So you have to kind of go back to the drawing board and start over again. Talk to people, go out and actually collect your samples. And how are you going to do that? You have to come up with new techniques because what works here in California diving isn't going to work out in Texas when you're diving. So things like that, you're always kind of thinking of ways to innovate and to solve the question that you're trying to answer. On the flip side, when I work for the government in a way that's more of like a regulatory position, so like right now I'm a wildlife biologist, and I was also a wildlife biologist for U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for a few years. The innovation is less experimental because you have to follow government regulations. It's more like how do you streamline regular, the red tape, how do you kind of streamline it so you're not holding your projects back? It's less experimental, less surveying, less research, and it's more following regulations. So you're a little more trapped in, but there's always some kind of wiggle room to kind of move around that red tape a little bit. So, really just depends if you're working in a position that's more regulatory, like on the state and federal side, or if you're more on the research academia side. I would say if you're looking for more innovation, you want to really express your ideas and do experiments and try again. That's more research academia/academia because you do research for the government and for private sectors. If you're looking for, I don't really want to come up with new ideas. I kind of just want to implement what's already there. That's more state, more regulatory positions like what I'm in now. So I think it just depends what kind of position you're in.
Yeah, but I think you highlighted perfectly how there is room for innovation in both those kind of scenarios, whether it's the idea piece or like the processes themselves. Ryan, you've already mentioned a little bit. That's what your team does, innovate and figure out solutions. So, can you talk to us more about that?
Yeah. So honestly, that's the main reason I'm at Sac State. I am ultimately because, I worked for the USGS, which is probably more similar to the, structure that Amanda has, where it's like, hey, you're going to work on this project. It was fun. I got to get outdoors and do things like that, but it didn't have that component, right? Same with Kaiser, right? Kaiser is very templated. You're this cog in this big system. You do your piece. And then Sac State, it's like, hey, you're the first person to ever have this position at the campus, so we don't really know what we want you to do, but we need you to make the campus more sustainable, right? Like even from what is that, right? What does that look like? And so I like to thrive in that environment. I don't want to be told what to do. I want to be like told what the problem is and then help, have my team and me come up with the solution. And so that, when I got here, that was it. It's like, hey, you're over energy, water, waste, greenhouse gas emissions for the campus. Like, make them better. And so at its core, you can't do what has been happening because you're just going to get the same outcome, right? So like at its core, we change things constantly and we're trying to get people to change the way they're operating and do things differently. And so that's a challenge because like we're always looked at as that team who always comes in and tries to tell people how to do stuff better. And so like over the years, it's been really cool to see an evolution in the people that we work with, right? So like for example, like the plumbing shop, right? They've done certain things and they've used certain products for years and years and years. We've been able to come in and be like, "Hey, I get it. You've done it this way, you've used this, but we are trying to reduce water, right? Would you be open to working with us to do a pilot project to see if this works, right?" And so a version of that conversation with energy, with natural gas, with waste reduction, all of that, and just kind of getting in front of the people who operate those systems and being like, "Hey, we're not here to tell you how to do your job, but we're trying to do this. Would you work with us, right?" And so we've gotten to the point now, like where our plumbing shop, our electric shop, they'll come to us and be like, "Hey, I have this idea for a new product or a new system that we can implement," because we've worked so closely with them and not just like, rammed it down their throat, just been like, "Hey, we want to work with you guys, but we don't want to make your job more difficult ultimately, right?" And so, like that's again at its core, that's what we do is we implement programs and we change systems in order to reduce all of those different things. And it's been, we've made a pretty good impact in all of the different categories, but the more rewarding part is seeing people who are now on board with that change, and so that's pretty awesome.
Absolutely. I can attest as a Sac State employee to changing some practices in our office and in my personal, you know, business and personal work, I guess, to be more sustainable for sure. All right, so we're gonna step back a little bit, get a little more broad. We're looking for some advice. What advice would you give someone who's still a student or very recently graduated from Sac State? We're in a career buzz panel, so hopefully in that realm. Amanda, what advice would you give?
I have so much advice to give. I have a brother who's 2 or 3 years younger than me, and he's in the student shoes right now. He just graduated from Sac State, and he's kind of like, well, what do I do now? If you're a student and you're like, a sophomore, junior, internships all the way. Even if you're a senior, you're able to find internships. You don't need internship, but it's highly, highly, highly recommended because when you go to apply for jobs, everyone has the same degree. Everyone went to college now. Everyone has a bachelor's. So what have you done that sets you apart from someone else who has the same degree, same GPA? And those internships and that experience in your field is what's going to set you apart from someone else. And also gives you an idea of what you want to do. Like, I originally went to school to be a teacher, and then I did an internship, and I was like, heck no, I want to go be a research scientist instead. So I think internships allow you the experience to see if it's really what you want to do. And if it isn't, now you know, right? It's kind of a trial run. And if it is, then you have that experience to bring with you to interviews. And then if you don't have the experience, you're kind of approaching the senior year and you don't really have any internships and you may be having some difficulty applying for jobs or getting an interview, I would recommend going to grad school. And I know it kind of freaks people out going to school for a couple more years. I promise it flies by. And there's always a ton of internships. Like I said earlier, the worst they can say is no. Apply for internships to pay for your grad school. Because once again, you're going to apply for these jobs and you have a bachelor's, but everyone has a bachelor's. So if you don't have the experience, I recommend going to grad school. So that kind of applies for both. There's also internships for people who are recently graduated. So if you didn't get an internship when you were in school, there's still a lot of internships that are for recent graduates as well. So anything that can get your foot in the door. If you're in the hard science, I recommend talking to a professor of a class that you really enjoy and ask them how you can help in their lab because they usually have a lab and they're doing some kind of wacky experiments in their lab and they love to use undergrads for help. And that is experience for you to see if it's something you enjoy. And it's also experience to put on a resume that helps you stand out. So I'm all pro internships because that's how I feel I got my job today. Because I helped out in the teacher's lab, I got my NASA internship. Because I got my NASA internship, I got to go to grad school and travel the world. Because of that, I got, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and now with the state. So I think it's a domino effect. So start out early in someone's lab would be my recommendation and work your way up to an internship and maybe grad school if that interests you.
For sure. And I just want to shout out, it's in the chat, but as well as online, your access to the Career Center as both a student and an alum of Sac State is ongoing. So the Career Center posts their campus internships as well as coordinates with off-campus entities that are offering internships. So a great way to find out about those opportunities and see what's available to you. Ryan, advice generally?
Um, yeah, so I have a few different things. I mean, one, like real talk, right? The bachelor's degree is the new high school diploma, right? So like I interview a fair amount because I'm constantly trying to keep my positions full. And I can tell you in the last couple years, it's gotten so much more competitive, right? Like the last position I posted, I think I had 120 candidates apply. And so the reality is we didn't interview anyone that didn't at least have a graduate degree. Not because you need that necessarily for these jobs, but because the competition is so steep, you have to have some way of kind of weeding the list down a little bit, right? And so that's one big thing. It's like some people are like, oh, I don't know if I should go to grad school. And this is specifically for like our industry. I can't speak for other industries, but in talking to my peers at other universities as well, that's kind of where it's at, right? The last person I hired had like two master's and two bachelor's degrees for an intro, like, position on my team. But it's just that's the market, right? It's so saturated. If you don't at least get that as your base level, then you're not giving yourself a shot. But then on top of that, we're looking for people who have cool project experience, right? Who have good examples that they talk about during the interview, right? If all you have to say during your interview is I got this degree and I got this graduate degree, but you don't have any, not necessarily work experience, but it goes back to the internships or the projects, right? And so that's hugely beneficial because those are the things that give you something interesting to talk about during your interviews. And people remember that, right? And so, and what part of what our team does on campus is we try to interact with students to kind of give them that. So I like examples. So like one example, we had a biology student actually that worked with us years back. And we were like, hey, we're entertaining swapping out all the faucets on campus from the manual ones to the infrared automatic ones, right? We're like, we were curious, the vendor's going to tell you it's the greatest thing since sliced bread, it's going to cut your water usage, but we wanted actual data. So this biology student worked with our plumbing shop and we put a temporary meter in. We did a whole study to see the difference in water usage between the two. This is all driven by the student with like our support. And so, long story short, the result of that was her study found that there was about a 54% reduction in water usage. So that's great, right? But then our department took that and we went after a Department of Water Resources grant and we got $700,000 to replace all the faucets on campus. So like if I was sitting down with a student and they were telling me this project that they did, I'd be like, can you start on Monday? But that's just an example of like one project. You want to try to get as much work experience as you can, even though you're not technically employed yet through internships and through different projects and just like real world examples like that to kind of set yourself aside. The other thing is don't if you're not super happy or super passionate, don't settle, right? Like this is my third adult job, right? I did USGS, I did Kaiser, and now I'm here and I love this job, right? And so, but if I had just settled with Kaiser, there's not a lot of people who are like, I work for Kaiser and I left because the reality is like Kaiser pays really well. But if you're just there for the money, you don't have the passion, right? Don't settle And it's way easier to make those changes earlier in your career than later. Like if I came home now and told my wife I'm going to change careers, she'd probably kick me out. Because I have a 15-year-old and, like all of the, the bills and all that stuff. But when you're younger, it's a lot easier to be like, I'm going to make some changes and take a little bit of risk and try to get into a career where you can wake up every day and be like, I really like what I do. And that's hard to find. I think a lot of people are just like, I got a good paying job. Yay. So, yeah.
I like that piece about risk too. Like now's the time to try a few things. To what Amanda said too, try connecting with those professors who might have those projects that um, can be those skill builders or resume builders. Yes, unpaid work, put it on your resume. Find the experience that you have, even if it wasn't like, here is your paycheck for doing this, for sure. All right. I have one last question, and then we're gonna kind of see if the audience has some questions. But I want to wrap up something maybe more personal, maybe fun. It could be professional or personal. I want to know, what goal would you still like to accomplish, even if you're not at the start of your career? What is still out there for you? Ryan, since you were talking about risk, is there still something you're searching, grabbing, reaching for?
So, honestly, I'm gonna go more like the personal. If there's opportunities for me to grow, that's the problem is like from sustainability, I'm kind of in the highest position at Sac State I can have. I'm not an AVP or anything like that, but if I like working here, and so I could go to like the chancellor's office and do something like that. But I'll go more the personal. And so one goal that I have is I want to go to every single national park in the country. I've been to maybe about half or so. I have one more for California that I'm going to hit this summer. I'm going to North Cascades, way, way up north by Seattle. But yeah, so that's a goal that I have that I would like to visit every national park in the country. Yeah, in my lifetime. So.
I love it. That's great. My daughter was just talking about Yellowstone yesterday. So national parks on the brain for sure. All right, Amanda, how about you?
Yeah, Ryan, really quick, if you need advice on the National Park of American Samoa, let me know. I go there like almost every summer. So I go American Samoa all the time. For me, it's kind of a mixture. I'm 26, so I'm kind of at this weird transition phase where I have a lot of work experience and I love my job now, but it's not somewhere I see myself being forever. I think that's kind of common when you get to, my age where you're still pretty young and you're young enough to still transfer to a job and get full retirement somewhere. And especially being a woman, there's things you have to think about if you want a family and stuff like that. So I think for myself, I really enjoyed teaching at Sac State. That was probably one of the highlights of my graduate career. And so I see myself returning to academia as a instructor, maybe going to get my PhD, becoming a professor, but the market's super saturated for that. So I think I see myself going to teach science in some capacity. Although I make very good money now, like Ryan was saying, money isn't everything, and work-life balance for me is really important. And doing what makes me happy is very important. So I think that going to teach, even though I might make a little bit less money, would make my heart really happy. And it's something that I'm very passionate about. So I hope in the near future to return to teach science, either at Sac State or a JC somewhere close by, TBD. So hopefully in the relative future.
Great. Well, I will be hopeful for both of you to accomplish those goals in the near, not so distant future. But they both sound like, rewarding next steps. So thank you again, both of you, for your insight, your advice. Really appreciated the conversation. Do want to make some time for Q&A. So we have a little bit of time left in our session webinar today. If you, an audience member, have a question, please go ahead and drop it in that Q&A feature. Um, and we will kind of see what makes the most sense. Um, I have one here. Just to start us off, great question. What's the coolest thing you've done in your job? The coolest thing. You gotta maybe take a minute. Amanda, you sound like you know this
Oh,
already. Go for it.
oh, I already know. Grad school for me provided me with so many cool experiences. I got to travel the world with my advisor. Like we went to France together, we went diving in Texas, we went diving in Curacao. Because when I was an undergrad, I told her, she's the geology department chair, love her, Dr. Wagner. I said, hey, I want to do what you do when I grow up. I was an adult already, but when I grow up, I want to do what you do. And she said, I don't know. You don't have a geology degree, you have an earth science degree. And I was like, watch me. And then years later, she became my master's advisor, and we got to do really cool things because my thesis was collecting corals and analyzing them in a lab. And corals are not in Sacramento. Then the hard corals are not in California. So of course we had to go travel. And that was what led me to American Samoa a few times to teach and dive. And like I said, like Caribbean and Texas was where my corals for my thesis were. So I think kind of pushing myself because I'm, like I said, from Elk Grove. So I didn't know that marine biology was a job. I didn't like watch documentaries like, I'm going to do that when I grow up. I didn't know that was a job. So when I found the opportunity, I really took advantage of it and learned how to scuba dive in grad school, stuff like that. So I think that was the coolest thing, which is doing my thesis and kind of being an adult and making semi-adult money, but also having the freedom to kind of travel and do cool research.
Awesome. Thank you. Very adventurous. Ryan, what's the coolest thing you've done in your job? This job or another job?
Um, well, yeah. So I guess I'll stick to this job. Honestly, it's just in general, it's a lot of the things that we do have a massive impact on the campus. And so it's really cool just in general to see like my team come up with like, hey, we should do this. And then you see it on campus, you're like the solar panels are a perfect example. Like when I got here, we had like a few batches, right? But we put in a lot of solar, and so like the massive solar array in the surface lot on the Highway 50 side of campus, I get excited because I'm like, that was something that our team came up with, and now it's going to be on campus for 20, 30 years, right? So it has a big impact. So just in general, it's really cool to see our ideas actually come to fruition and happen on campus. Specific project wise, though, we do have one program that's just like it's really cool when I think about it. We have an anaerobic biodigester on campus, which is pretty sweet. Food waste goes in. It breaks that food waste down, makes a natural gas, which then gets run through a generator, which creates electricity, which gets stored in a battery and then gets used on campus. And so I think that's really cool because we're literally creating energy out of food waste. And so that's probably like project wise the coolest one I've been a part of. I got to go to Denmark for the chancellor's office. That was pretty fun. It's not like Curacao, but still. um, so yeah, that would be yeah. The just generally like seeing these projects that are massive projects have an impact on the campus. That's what motivates me too. So.
That's great. I love it. Both the two sides of, or two of the many sides of what can be cool, seeing what your work is doing, essentially. All right. A little more job specific. Do you maybe have specific examples for getting experience in the field? Do your specific organizations have internship or volunteer opportunities?
Tons, tons. Like I said, if you're fresh, you don't really know what to start, a professor. If there's a class you really like, even if you haven't talked to a professor before, just email them. If you're kind of shy, that's kind of what I did. I said, hey, professor, and they'll email. Hey, I love this class. Do you have a lab? Is there anything I can help out with? Simple as that. Worst they can say is no, right? But say, no, I actually don't have any space or my lab's kind of full, but this professor does something similar. You should go check them out. And the thing about professors is they always have the opportunities. Like, hey, I see you did a really good job in my lab. Here's an internship that came across my desk that you'd be perfect fit for. And that's exactly what happened to me. I wasn't even a physics major, but it was my physics professor that showed me the NASA internship because she knows I was interested in something like that. So I think starting out there, I worked, like I said, for U.S. Fish and Wildlife and with NASA, which are federal. They do historically have internships. I would say beginning of last year, the funding has been kind of cut for internships on the federal side. They're still there here and there. but not as many as there used to be. But on the state side, so I work for Caltrans right now, tons of internships, tons of internships. It's an engineering firm, so there's lots of money, but they still need environmental scientists. CDFW, so California Fish and Wildlife, has a lot of internships. The state overall has a lot of internships in general. So I would say start with your professors and then ask them, hey, do you know of any internships? Because what I used to do when I was with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service was I would send our internship opportunities to professors to share with their students. So you don't know what opportunities are out there until you ask. So I would recommend asking some professors whose class interests you.
Great advice. Use your resources on campus. Ryan, you're on campus. Any examples?
Yeah, I mean, we work with a lot of interns just like at our department. And so, we'll have students that email us and say, "Hey, I want to do an internship with you." Either they have a project they want to do that we work with, or you're like, "I just want some experience." And so for us specifically, like there's a link on our website. You can just go there, email us, and then we'll bring you in and chat with you about like what you're interested in working in. And it's interesting because sustainability is such a broad field that we've had interns that were business students and construction management students and food and consumer sciences. So there's always some type of project that you can work with students on based on what their actual degree that they're pursuing is. So I always find that interesting. But just more generally, don't be afraid to just like cold call people, to be honest. Like if there's a company that you're like, man, I really like what they do, I think 9 times out of 10, if you hit a company up and you're like, hey, I'm getting a degree in this, I'm really interested in it, I would love to come work for you for free, right? Most places are going to be like, okay. And to be honest, that's how I got both of my jobs, right? My initial internship at Kaiser through my project, I didn't get paid for it. I got cool project experience out of it. And it was the same for the USGS. Like if we're able to, funding wise, we try to pay ours, but at the end of the day, I wouldn't have that be a requirement. If you can make it work, right? Because it's the experience that's the most valuable because it kind of gives you that project, that thing to talk about moving forward. But yeah, if you can find a paid internship, then that's even better. But yeah, don't be afraid to reach out to people if there's something that you're interested in, whether it's a project with a professor or faculty member, like Amanda mentioned, or man, like I'm really impressed by this company. Right? I love what they're doing. I'd really love to work with them. So just email them or give them a call and be annoying, right? If you don't hear back, follow up. Hey, I'm just following up, be professional, right? But I sent you an email last week and I haven't heard back from you. What are your thoughts, right? Don't because people miss it. Like I think I have like 3,000 emails in my inbox. So, don't just be like, well, they didn't reach out. The squeaky wheel gets the oil, right? So be professional though.
Oh, I like that at the end. Yes. I would like to give a shout out to the Sac State Career Network. And then as the Alumni Association, we are um, frequently offering kind of career development programs and activities. Um, so our networking party, we serve mocktails, like you're actually kind of in a professional setting, but the chances there for students and recent grads to get that experience and then connect with real alumni. So you might, make those connections beyond your professors. Professors are a great place to start, but maybe there's some alumni that can also support you as well. Um, and other programs that are out there, we have a You've Graduated Now What session coming up after commencement in June. That is another great webinar of like, what do I do now that I have this degree in my hands? And we've got some advice from different areas of like, what maybe path can you go down next? So, um, just a little shout out for ourselves, the Alumni Association, and then your resources on campus like the Career Center and Career Network. But yes, to everything that Ryan and Amanda said as well. Once again, thank you. That's all the questions I have here. So Thank you again, our fabulous panelists. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you if you're watching later down the road and looking to get into kind of the environmental space, workplace sector, all of those things. Please stay connected with us, your alumni association. We want to continue supporting you. You're our Hornet for life, so stingers up. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks.